Welcome to Loup TV. I'm your host, Gene Munster. Our topic today is Loup's prediction that Apple will be the top performing FANG stock in 2021. The headline is that we think that Apple can reach $200 a share over the next couple of years. That's the big picture. You can take a step back and go through the gives and takes about how we got to that decision. There is some historical precedence here that this is the third year in a row that Loup has predicted Apple will be the top performing FANG stock. That was in fact the case in 2019 and 2020. And as Loup debated this over the past few weeks, our investment team, the topic did come up that if we were correct in 2019, 2020, let's not push it. Let's just move on and pick a different top pick for 2021. That conversation was extremely short. That's just not how we approach investing. We want to ultimately be right and just really start from a fresh slate every year. Which company will in fact be the top performing FANG? And as we went and did the exercise from the ground up, it became very clear to us that Apple is in best position to do that. I'm going to step through the 4 reasons why we believe that, and then separately talk about why we didn't pick some of the other FANG stocks. The 4 reasons why we picked Apple as the top performer was first is this accelerating digital transformation. This is the concept that we are going to be working from anywhere and parents will be prepared to learn from home at any time. That is, in fact, part of the picture, but also whether it's an increase in Zoom calls or an acceleration in e-commerce, all of these, oftentimes we use Apple's products to experience this digital transformation. And Apple's products are probably the easiest for consumers to experience this and to really ride this wave. And so the digital transformation acceleration of that was our first point. The second is 5G in the back half of 2021. As a point of reference is that the carriers have talked about some wicked speeds of gigabyte downloads. That would be about 20x faster than what you're typically getting with LTE. Those are fairy tale speeds at this point. They're a few years away, but we think in the back half of 2020, we'll start getting 200 megs down at a consistent basis across the US. That would be about a 4 or 5x increase from LTE. And we think that's going to start to be a catalyst for consumers to word of mouth and talking about the snappiness of their phones. 5G is more than just faster download speeds on your phone long term, but we think that that will start a multi-year upgrade cycle for Apple in the back half of 2021. Typically an upgrade cycle is 1 year, so this has a little more legs to it. The third is we think when you put the accelerating digital transformation together with what we're talking about with 5G and the iPhone, that estimates for 2022 will increase. As a point of reference, the street's looking for about 15% revenue growth in 2021, current year, and it's looking for 5% for next year. But we think the fiscal 22 number is probably going to be closer to 10% plus revenue growth and earnings growth of 10 to 15%. And then the last piece is Apple's multiple and expansion of Apple's multiple. Of course, if we go back and look at the last decade, Apple was often penalized their multiple because of their hardware exposure. Investors now are understanding the importance of bringing it all together. There's only 2 other companies that can bring it all together. That's Samsung and Google. And there's only one company who does it just flawlessly from a user perspective. That's Apple. And we think that is going to be the hardware awareness is going to be a catalyst for the multiple in fiscal 21. Specifically, we expect more talk about Apple offering more products on a subscription basis. Today they have iPhone upgrade program. We think that in the next few years, they're going to add a Mac upgrade program, an iPad, and eventually drift to what we call the 360 bundle, which is you pay Apple a 1-month fee and you get everything, services, hardware, software, and you can kind of pick your flavor, if you will, within that. But there is a powerful opportunity that only Apple can do. We expect talk of that this year to be positive for the multiple. And then the second, of course, is what they're doing in auto, whether it's a car, whether it's broader transportation. It's a massive addressable market. Our estimates are that just cars alone are about $2 trillion with a T per year. Apple's current revenue is going to be around $315 billion. So when you talk about massive unaddressed markets and what's going to happen in autos over the next decade, this is wheelhouse of where Apple can participate. We don't know if it's going to be an Apple branded car or some service or an Apple transportation network like Uber and Lyft. But we do know that the company continues to pursue that. They've been at it for a long time, since 2013. And it is something that they can bring their hardware, battery technology, AI together to really be a catalyst for the transformation of cars moving to computers on wheels. And even though we're not going to see anything really probably before 2024 at the earliest, we think talk of that next year will be a positive for Apple's multiple. So that's how we get there. This $200 assumes a 35 multiple, which is kind of consistent with where it is today on our fiscal 2022 estimates. We're a little bit higher than the street for fiscal 22 at $5.70, but that's how we get to that $200 number over the next couple of years. I'm going to pause there and talk about the other FANG stocks, why they didn't get selected. And the runner-up was Amazon. Surprisingly, given its massive valuation, it really is hard to justify it on a valuation basis. But what also is hard to justify is that any company is really going to make inroads against them in e-commerce. It's still only about 15% of what's bought in the US is bought online. Eventually, that number is going to probably go to 60%. But we see an opportunity for Amazon and their logistics specifically. And then they're starting to add other segments. If you think about pharma, it is going to be very difficult to compete with Amazon. That was the runner-up. It is still, Amazon fits in the category of companies that are transforming. The third company on the list was Google. And while this is an advertising company, and advertising, you can build a case that advertising is going to rebound next year. And also that the amount of intensity around the antitrust issues is going to subside next year. That would be a bull case for Google. And another piece to it was that we see some of their other bets as being meaningful, whether it's future transportation with Waymo or longevity. We saw Google as a contender for this top pick in 2021. The reason why we ultimately did not put it at the top is that we still think advertising businesses are not transformative. That still is the majority. We don't see any of Google's other bets having a track to IPO or a standalone company in the next 12 months. And so given its exposure to advertising, yes, it will rebound. The comps are easy for Google and Facebook, but ultimately we see that the advertising play as being more of a negative in the equation than a positive. And then next was Facebook. This also benefits in 2021 from a really tough 2020. Advertising was negatively impacted. Tough antitrust environment. Those tides will likely swing modestly into their favor, and you can build a case that this should be a top performer. The reason why we don't have it up there is that we're putting a lot at stake that investors will increasingly want to see transformation and the ability for their biggest holdings to really lead us for the next decade. And we see as Facebook really pioneering and sticking with what they're doing around social as not transformative. And then rounding out the pack was Netflix. Great business, great medication for staying at home and the pandemic. However, it's not a transformative company. And of course, the comps get a little bit more difficult next year, a lot more difficult. Competition increases a little bit. And lastly, is that at the end of the day, they need to see some pricing increases really to propel this. And we're unsure whether that will happen. So that was the other four, FANG. That's why we decided to go with Apple. Please reach out if you have any questions. On behalf of Loup TV, I'm Gene Munster, and bye for now.